66 smaller books. The Bible was written over hundreds of years.
The Bible was written by 30 different people who were inspired by the Holy Spirit.
The Bible is split into two parts called Testaments, the Old Testament and the New Testament. Testament means evidence or proof.
The Bible was first written 2,000 years ago in Greek and Hebrew, and then was translated into English 500 years ago by Mr. William Tyndale.
Nowadays we can read the Bible in many different languages and have different translations like NIV and the Good News Bible.
A long time ago, the Bible used to be written on stones. Now you either read it in the book, or on phones, or on tablets.
There are 39 books in the Old Testament and 27 books in the New Testament. My favorite book is Esther because she's very brave.
My favorite story in the New Testament is when baby Jesus got born and the three wise men came to give him gifts.
The longest chapter in the Bible is Psalm 119. It has 176 verses.
There are 4 different types of books in the New Testament: Gospels, letters, a history book, and a book of prophecy.
Different types of books in the Old Testament. They are the law books, the history books, and the poetry books, and the books of prophecy. My favorite book is the book of Exodus.
The Bible was translated into English 500 years ago by a man called William Tyndale.
The Bible was originally written in Greek and Hebrew.
Hi guys, our talk today is called The Wrecking Ball. Now buildings get old, foundations sink and walls crack and doors and windows start to get stuck and not work. And if we don't maintain buildings and start to paint and do things to keep the building nice, then they can actually end up falling down and being quite dangerous to be in. Now, before a new building can be built, we have to knock down the old one and clear it away. And demolition jobs can be quite small, and you can just grab a sledgehammer like this and knock down a few walls and the job is done. But some building jobs are massive, and that's when you have to bring in the wrecking ball. Now a wrecking ball is a huge big giant ball on a heavy chain with a crane, and when that swings into action, the building can come down and be demolished in minutes. It's quite incredible to watch. In fact, let's go and do that now. Wow, that was amazing, wasn't it? What fun to be around, although quite dangerous, I think. So you may have guessed it, but our building project that we're looking at in the Bible today is actually a demolition project. Now God was leading his people. He'd taken them out of Egypt and he was leading them into the promised land. And they'd been walking in the desert for 40 years, but suddenly in their way was this massive fortified city, this military stronghold called Jericho. And as the people got to the border of the desert and they looked out, all they saw was this huge big city, this huge immovable object. But all that God saw was an amazing opportunity to demonstrate his power and his love for his people. Now you know the story. They'd been wandering in the desert. They had been there for 40 years. They were, I'm very sure, tired of the sun and the sand and walking and getting hot and thirsty and sweaty. So when they got to the edge of the desert and they saw the lush green pasture of the promised land, the land that God had promised to their forefather Abraham, they were ready to do whatever it took to get there. Joshua had his army and they were ready to fight. But we know, don't we, that God had a very, very different battle plan. He wanted trumpets and tambourines. He didn't want soldiers and weapons. He didn't want the army commanders. He wanted the worship team. He wanted the priests. And that is how he led his people into the promise that he had for them, this new land that was rich and fertile. And all that they had to do was listen to him. They didn't have to fight. They didn't have to do anything particularly hard or dangerous. They had to walk. And as they walk, they praised him. And that's what God showed them, is that as they went into the promised land, he did everything to get them there. Now, children, like I've said many times before, the Old Testament stories, which are about real people, real cities, real situations, show us what God is going to do through Jesus in the spiritual world in the New Testament. Now let me say that again, and maybe it's the older children who will really grasp this, but the Old Testament stories, which are about real people, Joshua was a real man, real cities and real situations, they are God's way of showing us something that he was going to do through Jesus in the spiritual world in the New Testament. So let's see how that pans out, how that works with this demolition job in Jericho. Now we know, don't we, that God is holy. God is awesome. He is perfect and pure, and he never does anything wrong. And as much as we love Jesus, and we may have been Christians for a long time, we also know, don't we, children, that we can mess up. We do things that aren't right, and there's sin in our world, and we can get angry, and we can steal, or we can swear, we can do things that a righteous God can't tolerate. And so God has to punish sin. But we also know that he sent Jesus. Now Jesus, we heard about a few weeks ago, is part of the Trinity. He is fully God. He was there at the beginning of creation. He helped create our world with the Father and the Spirit. He's fully God, but he was also fully man. He had a body just like you and me. He got tired, he got hungry, but when he walked on this earth, he never sinned. He was the only person to have ever lived who has never sinned. And he is the only person that deserved to live forever, to live in eternity. But he took on our punishment, because God has to punish sin, and all the sin of the world was laid on Jesus. Because when we sin, it creates a barrier. Each thing that we do that isn't right, that is not before a holy God, is sinful. We start to build almost a wall, like the wall of Jericho. And it becomes to be a barrier between us and our holy God. But on the day that the stone rolled away, that Easter Sunday that we've just celebrated, and Jesus walked out of the tomb, he showed us that he had conquered sin. He'd taken a sledgehammer. In fact, I'm sure he'd taken a wrecking ball to sin, and he demolished it. It was gone. There is no longer a wall, a barrier, anything between us and God. Jesus has paid the price. That sin is dealt with. When God looks at us, he sees Jesus, because we're clothed in righteousness. That's what the Bible tells us. But sometimes, sadly, we start to build brick upon brick that barrier up between us and God. We lie, or we get cross, or we get anxious, and we walk around worried, and we don't live in the freedom that God has promised us and that he wants us to walk in. And we start to lug on our shoulder almost that wrecking ball, that burden that weighs us down. And so, children, my challenge for you this week is to spend some time with your parents or on your own and talk to God about the things that weigh you down. Do you walk around worrying about school? Are you worried about what you look like or what other people are going to say? Do you live in fear of tests or other people, or what is it? Do you struggle with anger or with swearing? Those are the things that Jesus has died for this, so that we can live free. By the help of the Holy Spirit, we can live in freedom, but we get burdened down by all those things. And he died so that that is gone. There's no longer that barrier. So I really would love you to spend some time praying, talking to your parents, so that you know that each day is a new day. You are a new creation, and that you can live filled with his Holy Spirit and free. All right, guys, so I'll put some activities on the parent group, but also just a bit of fun. If you're in a big family, or bring some friends around, I want you to build a human wall. See how high you can get it, but please don't break any bones. See if you can hold it for 5 seconds or 10 seconds, just to have a bit of fun. All right, guys, have a great day, and we'll see you next week.